Hey guys, in today's video I thought we should look into cinematic colors or cinematic color grading. And why is that? Well, in celebration of my cinematic LUTs just launching today, I thought why not give you a little bit look into how they're made and how you get cinematic colors. I'm doing these signs while I'm saying cinematic colors because cinematic can mean a lot of things. To me, it means the harsh contrast that you see in movies. Like it can be softer, but like the usual hard contrast we're used to seeing with kind of like a little bit more soft blacks and soft highlights. Then it's the teal and orange colors sometimes, but that doesn't necessarily have to be exactly like that, but some color separation between the background and the highlights and the midground. And then lastly, it means cinematic movement in terms of like moving in front of subjects or moving slowly ahead with a drone or something like that. And the last bit obviously has nothing to do with the color grading, but that's kind of like what I feel is cinematic. So the movement combined with the colors, some color separation and some more harsh contrast is definitely what I feel like is the way to go. So today's video, we are gonna make a quick look into how you can make this kind of contrast and how you can achieve some cinematic looks. And we are gonna look into how you can then apply it and adjust it a little bit to some other clips. And then lastly, of course, I'm gonna show you how you can use my LUTs to just make more or less one click and then adjust the exposure afterwards. And if you're interested in seeing how the LUTs work, I actually have a free cinematic LUT that you can download and see if you like it. And if you do, maybe you consider buying the pack that I just released. If you're wondering about the hat, yes, my mom did make that for me. Anyway, let's jump into Davinci Resolve and have a look at it. All right, guys, we are inside of Davinci Resolve and we are, as you can see, inside the color page. And the first clip that we're looking at here is a drone clip from Cinnamon in Bali. And you can watch a lot of my other tutorials on how you make these node trees and stuff. So we're just going to jump straight into it and make a color space transform. We're going to make the DJI gamut and DJI lock, make it into Rec 709 and Gamma 2.4. That already made it look a lot better. Then let's just drag that to the bottom. Then let's do a little bit of adjustments up here for the exposure. But before we do that, let's make our contrast here. So let's jump into the custom curve and just drag down the contrast a little bit here towards the shadow parts here. Drag that down, drag up the highlights a little bit, get that contrast going. And now you might think, oh, that's way too much, but that's exactly why we're starting with that. So now we can jump into the second node and we can just push up the offset and make it look a lot better. So look at that. With these two nodes, just gone from this to this, that I think personally looks a lot more cinematic. We have some darker shadows and some brighter highlights. We might want to go in and just soften up the look a little bit, as we talked about before. So just dragging up the blacks a little bit and dragging down the whites just to soften up the image a little bit. And we will leave it at that. Now, to get a little bit of color separation, let's make another custom curve here on node 3. And for that, we are going to unlink the Y RGB and we're going to leave the Y alone for this one. So let's first jump into the blue channel. What we want to do is we want to make a little bit more of a teal tint into the shadows. So if we hold down Option, we can actually make a point that just stays on the line. And we're going to leave it around the shadows down here. We're going to push the blues a little bit into the shadows. Let's make it big here and see if it made a difference. We actually can't see it that much, but we can see it a little bit up here. And we can see it up in the background as well, that now it's getting a little bit more blue. But we don't want it to be blue necessarily, so let's go into the greens as well. Make a point at a similar point, holding down Option, and then dragging that up a little bit as well to get more of a tint. And you can see that now it's more of a teal tint. I think that looks pretty good, but it might be a little bit too much. So I'm just gonna push these down to 80 so that it's not way too much. And then for the red channel, we're gonna make a point around the same point here, but the reds are gonna be way more aggressive. So you can see as soon as we move this up, it's way more aggressive. So we actually wanna push some warmth into the image. And I think around here might be good, but it looks way too strong. So this one, we're actually gonna drop down to 55. And now you might think 55 is still quite a lot, but in this case, for these sliders here, 50 is 0. So you can go below, you can go negative and remove some red. So 50 is the 0.0, if you can say so. And moving up towards 100 will then be applying that effect. So if we look at what we've done, it's very subtle. But you can see if we zoom out quite a bit here that we have some more warmth inside of the highlights and the midtones, and then we have some more teal into the background here. The green pops a little bit more, and it has to be subtle. We don't want to go too overboard. So let's just see what we've done so far. We've gone from this, and this was after it was converted to Rec 709, to this with just a few adjustments, and I think it looks quite nice already. Then we could go in and make some adjustments to our colors and everything. We're going to leave that alone for now. But one more thing that I want to do is I want to push some more colors into our grade here. So let's just continue with our teal and orange approach here. So I think we're going to leave out some reds from the left here, and we are going to push some more blues into it. And see how that makes everything a little bit more blue in the background and kind of fades everything out a little bit. So let's try and leave it at that to begin with. Then we're going to try and counter that in the gamma. So I'm going to push a little bit more red into it and going to remove one blue. Let's see what that looks like. I think that's pretty good. Maybe we want to remove one more blue here. Just remove it a little bit more. Remove one green. And maybe actually just leave the red there. It's quite subtle now, but I like how it looks. We could go in and add just one more blue to the shadows here, then one green. No, we don't want to add the green, so let's leave that at 0. And I think that looks pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfect. We can always play around with this, but you can see how everything gets kind of this blue tint, but we are drawn into the highlights here. That is her in this case. So with just a few adjustments, we've gone from this to this. And even if we remove the Rec 709 conversion as well and go back to LUT, this is what it looked like before. And this is what we got now. I think that looks quite cinematic. But one thing that we want to look into is then pushing this onto some other clips. So let's take this one and let's put it onto this clip. Now immediately it will look wrong. That's first of all because our conversion is wrong. So let's fix that and make this Canon Cinema Gamut and Canon LUT free, as that's what it was shot in. Our exposure adjustments are not going to work, so we're going to remove those to begin with. Then we're going to drag the exposure down a little bit and see how that looks. So now we can see, because this is a different clip, our blues in the shadows are quite more aggressive. Let's just remove the clips again here and see what we've actually done. So this is what it looks like with the exposure adjustments. And this is what we get now. So if we remove our tint here, this is what we did with the lift and the gamma before. You can see it's quite aggressive here. So I think we want to move in and maybe even remove a bit more blue and maybe not a green. Maybe actually want to zero out green again and then add another red like so. Now it got pushed a little bit more towards the warm side. Actually don't want to do that. I'm going to reset the green. And for the background here, let's see what happens if we adjust one more blue. That's too much. Remove a green. That's almost too much. Move it slightly. It says negative now, so we did a little bit, but I think that looks a lot better. So for this clip, what we have done after the conversion to Rec 709 is go from this to this. And just looking at these past adjustments, let's take them off, see with the contrast, then adding a little bit more of a warm look. You can see how that affects the waterfall and the background a little bit. And then we adjust our stylistic grade to this last part, and now it's quite subtle. So I really like how this is looking. Let's see if we can apply it to a few more clips. So we're actually going to steal it from the first one here and apply it here, because then we got the correct Rec 709 conversion. Let's reset our exposure changes here and then look at what we've got. I think this looks pretty good, but the highlights are way too overexposed. So we're going to drag down the gain a little bit and then drag up the lift. And then we might want to adjust the highlights a little bit as well, like so. I think that looks pretty good as well. So you can see with doing the same thing, these 3 adjustments, and just moving them onto different clips, we have a pretty strong foundation for our cinematic color grade already. So I think that looks pretty good. Let's try and put it onto our last clip here. And right off the bat, I think that looks pretty good as well. Let's see what, even without the exposure adjustments, I don't even think we need those on this one. Let's just see if we put it on. I think it looks pretty good from the get-go. You can see how we are getting a lot darker shadows, and then our highlights are not blown out, but they are a bit stronger as well. And we really push out the colors in the image from doing this. That looks pretty cool. All right, I've shown you now how you can take with the tone curve, and this is a quite aggressive one. You can adjust the contrast. We want to do that as the first step. Then with this custom curve, unlinking the YRGB curves and then adjusting those separately. Blues in the shadows pushed up a little bit more, the greens a little bit less, maybe lowering both of them a little bit so they're not as strong. The same thing with the red channel. The red channel will be more aggressive, so you want to go low on that. I go usually 55 or 60. Remember that 50 is 0, so that will apply no effect. And then you can apply some personal stylistic color grading to the last node here, going into the primaries and then playing around with the lift and the gamma, maybe even the gain. So you can see for this one, it actually gives it a little bit more of a magenta look. So to fix that, we might want to add or remove some more blue from the gamma, maybe even turn up the red a little bit more, and play around with this to make sure that we get some colors that we like. So after playing around with this for quite a bit, you will get used to removing and adding the colors to the lift and the gamma. But I think controlling it with these sliders down here is quite a good way to do it. You could also just do it by hand, looking at it at the image here. But personally, I get a better understanding of adding or removing blue and red and green to the lift and the gamma to make sure that I understand what's going on and what I'm adding and what I'm removing, and making sure that I'm not doing too much, because sometimes you can push the image really far, but maybe that's a little bit much. So you want to make sure that you are doing it in a way that only creates a subtle look. And this looks pretty good as well. So that was just adding one red and removing a little bit of green and then removing two blues. So that's how you can do it that way. Now, of course, I want to show you how you can use my LUTs. So let's just go back to the first clip. The only thing we want to keep is the Rec 709 conversion. So I'm just going to delete everything else. I'm going to click Shift S to make a note before our conversion. I'm going to click Shift S again because we want to make sure that we can still adjust our exposure. I'm going to add the same one to all these clips and just make sure that for this one, we have the correct conversion before we do anything. Okay, so now we're ready to go. Hiding the other clips. And now we want to go in and find the LUTs. And we have two versions. We have for Rec 709 and we have the log. In this case, we're going to use the log ones. The Cine 0 is without any color grading adjustments or any look changes. It's not stylistic. It's basically just doing the contrast and a little bit of flare, kind of like what we did before. So you can see with one click and just adjusting the offset, we went from that to this. So I think that's a pretty good look. Now we can look at the other ones, which are a little bit more stylistic. So Cine 1 will add more of like a teal and green look. Cine 2 will add more of a blue look, which looks pretty good on this one since we have the water down here. Then Cine 3 is a little bit more warm, thought to be used for especially sunsets and sunrises. It looks really good. And then Cine 4 is more of like a desaturated look, a little bit more dark. So these 5 looks I think are pretty good for this one, this clip in particular. I think it looks pretty good. Let's jump to the next clip and see how it works on this one. So let's just start with Cine 0, and with one click we have a really good base. Let's drag down the offset a little bit to make it a little bit more moody. And then let's look at the different options here. So Cine 1 will make it more greenish. Cine 2 will give this blue look. That is pretty strong as well. This gives it a little bit more of a warm tint, but still pretty moody. And then this one makes it a little bit darker and more desaturated. We might even want to add a little bit more offset into this one to counter that a little bit. But that's how you can balance it and make it look pretty nice with just a few adjustments. Let's jump on to the next clip. This one is one of my favorites to use this on. So this one, we still want to add a little bit more to the left and remove some more gain, remove some more of the highlights, maybe add a little bit more gain again, and then add a little bit more lift because it gets quite dark. This was shot a little bit dark from the beginning. Let's look at Cine 1. This one doesn't really work that well for this clip in particular because the greens mixed with the blues makes it very teal. It could be a look and a style you want to go for, but I think it looks a little bit too teal-ish. But Cine 2 is pretty good for this one. I love how the blue colors are really emphasized and how everything looks I think it looks very cinematic, to be honest, without overusing that word too much. The third one can be used for this one, but again, the highlights will be a little bit warmer. I still like how the blues turns out on this one. And then this one, it's just a little bit more desaturated everything. So we might again go in and actually increase the gain a little bit to counter some of the effect that it does, maybe even remove our gain adjustments completely. And I like how everything is a little bit more desaturated with the colors here because that gives it quite a stylistic look as well. And then onto our last clip, doing the same thing. For this one, we don't even need to do much exposure adjustment. I think it works pretty well just right off the bat. This clip was pretty good exposed from the beginning, so you can just see how it's subtle changes with this one because we don't have that much color going on, but you can kind of see how in the background it changes a little bit depending on the grade that we're putting on. This is a little bit stronger for the highlights, so in this case we could decrease the gain a little bit, or maybe just the highlights, depending on your style and the look that you're going for. Just reset this one again and look at the last one. So these are basically the LUTs that I've been developing to make it easy to do the color grading, but you can also go ahead and do the steps that we did in the beginning and then start adding your own stylistic look afterwards. You could do that with these LUTs as well. It's completely up to you. Now, for the final thing, I just want to go into our extra tab here and just show you that they can work for clips that are not shot in log. So this is a clip from a GoPro, just going into the Rec 709, and I just want to show you that it works pretty well on these clips as well. Of course, giving it quite a stylistic look, but depending on which one you choose, you can see that the colors and the look changes quite a bit. Jump on to another clip. This is a drone clip from the Mini 2. I think for this one we need to do some adjustments because this is quite underexposed from the get-go. But you can see if we do that and then we turn up the gain, maybe turn up the offset a little bit to begin with, and then the gamma. I think with a few adjustments here, we can get a pretty strong look. And just looking at the different styles here, I think that's pretty cool. Some pretty cool looks. It looks a little bit more cinematic. The black's a little bit more faded. You can, of course, counter some of that again or make your own LUTs that look similar. This is from the Mini 3 Pro and shot in D-Cine-like. It is converted with just the normal DJI D gamut. And if we apply them to this one, I think they look pretty damn good as well. These are even the Rec 709 ones. If we go into the log ones, they look even better because it was shot in log. So just to show you that they're pretty versatile, and I think that they look pretty good no matter what colors you have. This one is another one from the Mini 3 Pro. Again, converted. It's shot in D-Cine-like, I think, but it's converted with the D-Log. And just look at how the colors can pop, and it gives them some quite different looks depending on which one you choose. And that's what I was going for without going too overboard. This one is shot on S-Log 2, so converted here from S-Log 2. I don't know the exact color space that was shot, so I used the standard S gamut. And you can see that, wrong note, these look pretty good on a shot in the forest like this as well. So that was just to show you a few different examples on how you can do it yourself, make your own cinematic color grades. As said in the beginning, you're welcome to download my free LUT as well. Does a lot of the similar things that I've been doing in this one, but I have put less work into that. Obviously it's free. It still works very well. And there is one for log footage and one for Rec 709 footage as well. And then again, you can go and grab my Cinepack as well if you're interested in that. Or otherwise, I hope that the first bit of this video really helped you out to understand how you can make some more cinematic looks yourself and play around with it. It's a journey with color grading, it always is. If you're looking for a quick option, I definitely think you should get my or some other LUTs. I think that's definitely the easiest way to go. Just do know that no LUT will work perfectly for all footage. You could see that one of our clips from the water, that didn't look very good with one of the LUTs, but then again, there are a few different looks that you can use from there. So I think that's it for this video. I will see you in the next one, and until then, take care.